A single moment, a single choice, and everything changed. Amanda Clarke wasn't supposed to be in danger that day. Just another school afternoon, just another crossing between classrooms and car lines. But when a car spun out of control, it wasn't just her life that was saved. Lucas Hale, a man she knew only as the untouchable millionaire father, stepped in and pulled her from harm's way. She thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't, because what began as a rescue unraveled secrets, trust, and a kind of love neither of them believed they deserved. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The afternoon air at Greenwood Hollow Academy carried the scent of warm asphalt and faint traces of rain. The drizzle had ended barely an hour ago, leaving the streets damp, the air thick with humidity. Parents lined the curb in sleek cars, some chatting on their phones, others waving at their children as they poured out of the school's front doors. Amanda Clarke stepped outside, balancing a heavy stack of books against her chest. The books, destined for a small display in the library, had seen better days, their covers worn and pages softened by countless young hands. She was tired, but it was the kind of tired that felt familiar, almost comforting, a sign of a day well spent. She adjusted the stack, pushing a lock of dark hair from her face, and started across the lot toward her car. The sound reached her before she saw it, the screech of tires struggling for traction on the wet pavement. Amanda's head snapped up, her breath catching in her throat. A silver sedan came around the bend too fast, the driver fighting the wheel as the car skidded toward the crosswalk. For a heartbeat, Amanda stood frozen, her body tensed, unable to move. Then, out of nowhere, strong arms wrapped around her, yanking her back just as the car shot through the spot where she'd been standing. The books tumbled from her grasp, scattering across the asphalt as she fell hard against the solid frame of the man who had saved her. They landed in a heap on the grass at the roadside, hearts pounding in unison, the roar of the car fading into the distance. Amanda blinked up at her rescuer, trying to catch her breath, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The face above hers was familiar, too familiar. Lucas Hale. The man who seemed to exist in another world entirely. The millionaire father who kept to the shadows, rarely seen at school events, always the subject of hushed admiration and endless speculation. "Are you hurt?" Lucas asked, his voice low, roughened by adrenaline. I don't think so," Amanda managed, pushing herself upright. Her palms stung from the fall, grass clung to her skirt, and her heart hammered in her chest. Lucas stood, offering his hand. Amanda hesitated only a moment before taking it, feeling the steady strength in his grip as he pulled her to her feet. "I saw the car coming too fast," he said, glancing down the street where the sedan had disappeared. "I didn't think. I just reacted." She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the figure from glossy magazine profiles, but a man, rumpled, breathless, his gray t-shirt clinging to him, his hair mussed by the wind. "Thank you," she said softly. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "You don't have to thank me." His gaze met hers, steady, grounding. Anyone would have done the same. She almost laughed at that. "I'm not so sure about that." A small voice called out, breaking the moment. "Daddy?" A little girl raced toward them, her sandy hair escaping its braid. "Clara." Amanda recognized her instantly, Lucas's daughter, a quiet, sweet child who visited the library often, always clutching a book like it was her best friend. Lucas crouched to meet her, pulling her close. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything's okay." Clara clung to him, her wide eyes flicking to Amanda. "Is the lady okay?" Amanda felt her heart ache at the child's concern. She nodded. "I'm okay. Your dad's very brave." Lucas stood again, still holding Clara's hand. "Let's get you to your car," he said to Amanda. "Just to be sure. I can manage. I'd feel better if I did." Together they crossed the lot. Their pace slow, as if neither wanted to break the fragile spell of the moment. Amanda's hands trembled slightly as she opened her car door, setting the books inside. She turned to him. "I mean it, Lucas. Thank you." He gave a small, almost shy smile. "You're welcome." Clara tugged at his sleeve. "Can we go home now?" Yeah, kiddo? We can. Amanda watched as they walked away, Clara's hand tucked safely in his. For a moment, she stood there, her heart still racing, her mind replaying everything. That night, as rain tapped softly at her windows, Amanda sat with a cup of tea gone cold, unable to shake the memory of Lucas's arms around her, the way he'd looked at her as if she mattered, not as a teacher, not as a name on a school roster, but as a person. Across town, Lucas stood at the window of his study, the city lights flickering in the distance. He thought of Amanda, the way her eyes had widened in fear, the relief that had washed over them when she realized she was safe. The warmth of her hand in his. He'd saved her life. But it felt like she'd done something to his too. The days after the accident unfolded like pages in a book Amanda hadn't meant to start reading. She told herself life would return to normal, that the whispers in the staff lounge would fade, that the curious glances from students would stop, that she would stop thinking about him. But normal was a strange, far-off thing when the memory of his arms around her still lingered like a phantom touch. The first time she saw Lucas again was 2 days later in the parking lot at pickup time. The late afternoon sun glinted off his car as he stepped out, wearing the same understated clothes that somehow made him look more approachable. Amanda tried not to stare, but her gaze found him anyway. He noticed her too. Their eyes met across the lot, and for a moment, the noise of idling engines and chattering children seemed to fall away. Lucas raised a hand in greeting. Amanda hesitated, then lifted hers in return. "Hi," he said when they found themselves side by side at the crosswalk. "Hi," she echoed, feeling the odd flutter in her chest that his presence always seemed to bring. Clara stood between them, holding her father's hand but glancing shyly at Amanda. "How are you feeling?" Lucas asked. "Good. A little embarrassed by all the attention, but fine." "You shouldn't be embarrassed. You did nothing wrong." "I froze," she admitted. "You were human," he corrected gently. There was a pause, filled with the bustle of students rushing past, the scent of spring rain still clinging to the breeze. "I wanted to thank you again," Amanda said, though she'd already said it what felt like 100 times in her mind. Lucas shook his head. "You've already thanked me. Maybe I just wanted an excuse to talk to you." The words slipped out before she could stop them, soft, honest. His smile was small, but real. "I'm glad you did." After that, it seemed as if the universe conspired to throw them together. He appeared at school pickups more often, no longer sending an assistant or the nanny. Amanda found him waiting near the front steps, leaning against his car, always with a warm nod or a quiet hello just for her. Sometimes they would fall into step together on the way to the parking lot, talking about books because Clara would ask what Amanda recommended next, or about Clara's favorite animal that week, or about nothing at all. Just enjoying the ease that began to grow between them. Once, Amanda caught herself laughing at something Lucas said, a dry remark about the chaos of a second-grade science fair, and was startled by how natural it felt, how long it had been since she'd laughed like that with a man. Clara, for her part, started seeking Amanda out. She would wave eagerly from the back seat or tug her father's sleeve and ask if they could stop and say hello. One afternoon, Amanda found a drawing slipped into a returned library book, a stick figure version of herself holding hands with a stick figure Clara, both smiling beneath a lopsided rainbow. Lucas seemed at ease in these small, unplanned moments, as if he, too, was discovering the quiet joy of connection without the expectations that usually shadowed his world. If you're still here, you're amazing. Hit like if you love true stories, it helps us keep going. One evening after a particularly long day, Amanda stayed late to help with the school's book fair. She was loading boxes into her car when she heard his voice. "Need a hand?" She turned to see Lucas approaching, sleeves rolled up, as casual as if he helped load book boxes every day. "I've got it," she said, but the smile on her lips gave her away. "I insist." They worked together, falling into an easy rhythm. The sun dipped low, casting golden light that turned everything soft at the edges. When the last box was stowed, they stood there for a moment, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "Would you let me buy you coffee?" Lucas asked suddenly, surprising them both. Amanda hesitated, not because she didn't want to, but because she did more than she wanted to admit. "I'd like that," she said at last. But just as quickly, the sound of an approaching car, a familiar sleek sedan, snapped her from the moment. "Tyler." Her ex slowed as he passed, gaze flicking between them with a smirk that chilled her blood. Lucas noticed the change in her, the way her posture stiffened. "Everything okay?" Amanda forced a smile. "It's nothing. Just an old ghost." Lucas didn't press, but he watched as Tyler's car disappeared around the corner and something protective settled in his eyes. That night, Amanda lay awake, the memory of the sunset, of Lucas's kindness, of the way Clara's small hand had fit into hers, replaying like a dream she didn't want to end. And Lucas, in his quiet house, stared at his phone, debating whether to message her, to bridge the space between what was safe and what was real. In the end, neither slept well, both wondering what came next. The peace Amanda and Lucas had started to build, quiet and tentative, didn't last long. It began with small things, glances that lingered too long at school events, hushed conversations in the staff lounge that stopped when Amanda entered the room, parents whispering at pickup while pretending to check their phones. She tried to ignore it, to tell herself it would pass. But Greenwood Hollow was a town that thrived on stories, and the one taking shape around Amanda and Lucas was far too good to let go. It didn't help that Tyler made sure to feed the fire. He started showing up more often at the grocery store, outside school grounds, even at the little coffee shop Amanda favored on Saturday mornings. Each time he acted casual, as if their paths crossing was nothing but coincidence. But his eyes told another story, possessive, calculating, amused. "You're making quite a name for yourself," he remarked one afternoon, cornering her by the shelves at the market. His voice was low, the words sharp beneath their lazy drawl. "Librarian catches a millionaire. That's a new chapter for you." "I'm not doing this with you, Tyler," Amanda said, gripping the cart handle until her knuckles whitened. "Relax," he said, holding up his hands. "Just proud of you, that's all." But he didn't leave it at that. Within days, whispers became headlines. "Local millionaire's mystery woman. Who is she?" "Single dad Hale and the school librarian. More than meets the eye?" Cinderella stories sell, and Amanda's face, grainy from zoomed-in paparazzi shots, spread across gossip sites faster than she could believe. Lucas tried to shield her. He kept the press at bay as best he could, tightened security around Clara, limited his own public movements. But the more he tried to protect Amanda, the more the storm seemed to feed on the idea that there was something to hide. One evening, after another article painted her as a schemer chasing Lucas's fortune, Amanda sat on her porch, staring out at the quiet street, feeling anything but quiet inside. When Lucas arrived, because of course he would, because he couldn't stay away knowing she was hurting, she didn't get up. "I didn't want this," she said, voice hollow. "I know. I just wanted to live my life. Do my job. Be invisible for once." Lucas sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "You deserve to be seen for the right reasons." She shook her head. "It's not about what I deserve. It's about what's happening. And I can't stop it." Neither could he. That was the worst part. But Tyler wasn't finished. Late one afternoon, he intercepted Amanda as she left school. "Can we talk?" "No." "Come on, Mandy. Just 5 minutes." Something in his tone, pleading, almost desperate, made her pause. Against her better judgment, she nodded. They met at a small park nearby, the place eerily empty in the fading light. Tyler shoved his hands into his pockets, rocked back on his heels. "I need help," he said. Amanda folded her arms. "That's not my problem. I got into a situation. Just a bit of bad luck at the track." She froze. "The track?" "Tyler, I just need a loan. A small one. You've got a connection now. You could ask him." Her breath left her in a rush. "You're out of your mind." But he kept pushing. "You owe me after everything. This isn't a big deal. Just ask him." "I don't owe you anything," she hissed. She walked away, heart pounding, stomach churning. The shadows felt longer, the air heavier. That night, she didn't sleep. And when her phone buzzed with Tyler's name, she didn't answer. But Tyler's debt had already attracted attention. And danger. The weight of Tyler's debt found Amanda before she even realized she was being hunted. It started with strange feelings, a car idling a little too long at the corner near her house, footsteps behind her on the walk from school that stopped the moment she turned. She told herself it was her imagination, frayed nerves from the gossip and stress. But deep down, she knew better. That night, she stayed late at school, finishing paperwork no one would thank her for, hoping the quiet halls would calm her. By the time she locked up and stepped into the dark, the streets were nearly empty, the hum of the town reduced to a distant whisper. She didn't see them until it was too late. Two men stepped from the shadows as she neared her driveway, faces hard, movements deliberate. "Where's the money?" one demanded, voice low, dangerous. Amanda froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. You're his girl. You can get it." Her heart pounded. "I'm not, he's not a." Wrong answer. She bolted, instinct driving her. But they were faster. One caught her arm, yanking her back. She fought, kicked, tried to scream, but a hand clamped over her mouth. The other man grabbed her wrist, twisting until pain shot through her like fire. A sickening crack. She gasped, the world tilting with the agony as they shoved her down. "Tell him. Next time, we won't be so nice." And then they were gone, their footsteps fading into the night as Amanda lay there, trembling, cradling her broken arm. The hospital was quiet in the way only hospitals could be, bright lights, soft beeps, the hush of waiting. Amanda sat on the edge of the bed, her arm in a cast, her body aching more from fear than from the injury itself. She didn't expect Lucas. But of course he came. He filled the doorway like a storm contained in a man, eyes dark with worry, jaw tight. "Amanda." She couldn't speak, could only look at him, at the concern etched into every line of his face. He crossed the room, sat beside her. His hand hovered for a moment before resting gently over hers. What happened? She tried to find the words, but they stuck in her throat. Tears she hadn't let fall now burned in her eyes. Lucas didn't rush her. Finally, she whispered, "It was Tyler. Not him, but because of him. They came for me." His hand tightened. Not in anger at her, but at the world, at himself, at the danger that had touched her. "Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want you to see this side of my life. I didn't want to be one more problem." "You're not a problem. He stopped, swallowed hard. "You matter to me." The quiet between them felt heavy with truth. "I'll handle it," Lucas said at last. His voice was soft but firm, the kind of promise that didn't need embellishment. Amanda wanted to argue, to tell him she could handle herself. But in that moment, she let herself lean into the comfort of him just for a little while. The morning after the hospital felt surreal. The bruises on Amanda's body ached. But it was the heaviness in her heart that weighed most. She sat at her kitchen table, staring at the untouched tea in her hands, replaying the night's terror, the feel of Lucas's steady presence beside her, the promise in his voice. Outside, the world moved on as if nothing had happened. But Amanda knew everything had changed. Her phone buzzed once, then again. Messages she didn't want to read. She ignored them all until the doorbell rang. She expected Jenna, maybe even the police following up. But when she opened the door, it was Lucas and Clara. Clara held a small bouquet of wildflowers, clumsily arranged but beautiful in their imperfection. Her eyes, wide and hopeful, searched Amanda's face. "Hi," Lucas said quietly. Amanda blinked, overwhelmed. "We wanted to check on you," he added. Clara stepped forward, offering the flowers. "I picked them. Daddy helped." Amanda knelt slowly, careful of her cast, and accepted the bouquet. The kindness in that small gesture undid the last of her defenses. "Thank you, sweetheart. They're beautiful." Clara beamed, and Lucas's gaze softened. "Can we come in?" he asked. Amanda hesitated only a moment before stepping aside. Inside, the house smelled of tea and old books. Lucas looked around, taking in the small space, the lived-in feel, the way Amanda's world reflected who she was. Simple, warm, real. They settled in the living room, Clara happily flipping through a picture book Amanda offered, while Lucas sat close, his expression serious but kind. "I meant what I said last night," he began. "You're not alone in this. Not with them, not with anything." Amanda looked down at her hands. "It's not fair to you. You didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to care about you either. But I do." Her breath hitched at the honesty in his voice. "I'll deal with Tyler's mess," Lucas continued. "But I want to be here, not just to fix things, to stay." Amanda searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. She found none. "You don't know what you're signing up for," she whispered. "I know enough, and I know I want to be part of it." The quiet that followed felt different this time, full of promise instead of fear. Days turned to weeks, and the pieces of Amanda's life began to settle into new shapes. Tyler disappeared from the edges of her world, thanks in no small part to Lucas's quiet but decisive intervention. The press, bored with the lack of scandal, moved on to shinier stories. Lucas and Amanda learned to navigate the fragile, beautiful thing growing between them. They didn't rush it. They didn't need to. Small moments became everything. Shared coffees on Amanda's porch, afternoons at the park with Clara, evenings spent talking until the stars appeared. One evening, as they sat on a worn blanket at the edge of a quiet meadow, Clara asleep beside them, Lucas took Amanda's hand in his. "I used to think my life was too complicated for this," he said softly. "And I used to think mine was too small." He smiled, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. "But here we are. Here we are," she echoed, leaning her head against his shoulder. The night air was cool, the sky above endless and full of possibilities. Love, Amanda discovered, wasn't built in grand gestures or perfect moments. It grew in quiet spaces, in the way Lucas carried grocery bags without being asked, in how he always paused to listen when she spoke, in the soft goodnights whispered over Clara's sleepy head. Their world, once shaken by chaos, settled into a rhythm that felt both fragile and unbreakable. Mornings began with coffee shared at the kitchen table, fingers brushing as they reached for the sugar bowl. Lucas, more relaxed than Amanda had ever seen him in the early days, would sit barefoot, his hair still tousled from sleep, reading over Clara's homework while Amanda packed lunches. Sometimes they bickered over silly things, the right way to load the dishwasher, whether classical music or jazz should fill the house while they cooked. But the arguments always ended the same way, with a laugh, with a kiss, with the unspoken promise that nothing so small could shake them. Clara thrived in the warmth between them. She took to calling Amanda's little house our house without realizing she'd said it, her drawings filled with 3 stick figures beneath suns and rainbows. Lucas found himself lingering at school events, no longer content to send donations from afar. Amanda watched him kneel beside Clara at science fairs, help with art projects, clap loudest at small recitals. And when their hands found each other in the crowd, it felt as natural as breathing. Evenings were their sanctuary. They'd sit together on the porch, watching the sky darken, sharing thoughts they'd never voiced to anyone else. Lucas spoke of his wife, the good memories, the regrets, the holes grief had carved into him. Amanda spoke of her fears, her hopes, the weight of having trusted the wrong man once and learning to trust again. There were no declarations of forever, just small, daily choices to show up for each other. One night, long after Clara had fallen asleep, Lucas traced gentle circles over Amanda's wrist where the cast had once been. I was so scared of losing you before I'd even had you, he admitted. Amanda cupped his face in her hands. You never had to be. He kissed her then, slow and sure, the kind of kiss that said they had time. They talked sometimes about what came next, whether they'd sell one house or the other, whether Clara would prefer a backyard with a treehouse or a garden full of flowers. But mostly, they focused on the now, on building something real, moment by moment. There were still bumps. Flashbulbs at the edge of the schoolyard some mornings, whispers that flared and faded. But they faced them together, and that made all the difference. Amanda no longer felt like she was holding her breath, waiting for the world to fall apart. With Lucas beside her, with Clara's hand tucked into hers, she felt grounded, whole. Love wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And that was enough. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life. See you in the next one.